You're not obsessed enough. That's true. You're probably not. But here's the mistake. You think that's where successful people started. It isn't. Look at almost anyone who's exceptional. An athlete, a musician, a founder, a writer, a scientist. From the outside, they all seem obsessed. They think about their work constantly. They notice details nobody else sees. They keep going when everyone else is tired. They willingly spend thousands of hours doing something most people would find painfully repetitive. So the conclusion feels obvious. If I were obsessed like that, I'd probably be successful too. It's a convincing story. And it's also backwards. Because what you're looking at isn't the beginning, it's the last chapter. You're watching someone after years of progress and expecting yourself to feel the same way on day one. Imagine watching a documentary about an Olympic athlete. You don't see the first week. You don't see the awkward training sessions. You don't see the moments when quitting sounded completely reasonable. You meet them years later, when training has become part of who they are. Then you quietly compare that version to yourself at the very beginning. No wonder it feels impossible. We do this with almost everything. We watch a great pianist and assume they always loved practicing. We meet an entrepreneur and assume they were always thinking about business. We listen to an incredible writer and imagine they always enjoyed sitting alone for hours. But beginnings rarely look that way. Most beginnings are surprisingly ordinary. They're inconsistent, sometimes exciting, sometimes boring, sometimes frustrating, sometimes so repetitive that you wonder why you're doing it at all. That's the part nobody turns into documentaries, because it isn't dramatic. It isn't inspiring. It's just work. And that's exactly why so many people misunderstand obsession. They think it's a personality trait, something you're either born with or you're not. But that's rarely how it develops. Think about anything you've ever become genuinely interested in. Maybe it was photography, cooking, programming, learning a language. At first, everything felt slow. You had to think about every tiny step. Nothing felt natural. Progress was difficult to notice. Then something changed. Not overnight. Gradually, you stopped struggling with the basics. You started recognizing patterns. Things that once required effort became automatic. Suddenly, what used to feel exhausting became interesting. Not because the activity changed, because you did. That's the part people almost never notice. They assume obsession created the progress, when very often, progress quietly created the obsession. There's another reason this misunderstanding feels so convincing. We rarely notice how our relationship with an activity changes over time. At the beginning, almost every task feels expensive. Writing one page can drain your energy. Practicing for 30 minutes feels like an entire afternoon. A single difficult conversation stays in your head for the rest of the day. Everything demands attention because everything is new. But months later, those same actions barely register. You sit down and start working without negotiating with yourself. You solve problems that once felt impossible. You make decisions in minutes that used to take hours, not because you become more disciplined, because your brain has stopped treating every step as unfamiliar. That's what experience quietly does. It reduces friction. And once that friction disappears, people looking from the outside mistake the result for passion. They think, this person must love working all the time. Sometimes they do. But what they're often seeing isn't unlimited motivation. It's years of accumulated familiarity. The work still requires effort. It just doesn't require the same amount of resistance. And that's a huge difference. Because beginners assume experts wake up every morning filled with excitement. In reality, many experts simply don't spend much energy convincing themselves to begin. The habit is already there. The uncertainty is gone. The first step no longer feels heavy. From the outside, that looks like obsession. From the inside, it often feels like normal life. The strange part is, your brain actually encourages this misunderstanding. Because when you watch someone who's exceptional, you don't just see what they do, you see how naturally they do it. A great musician doesn't seem to struggle. An experienced programmer solves problems almost effortlessly. A successful entrepreneur talks about business as if it's impossible not to think about it. From the outside, it looks like passion came first. But confidence always looks effortless. After thousands of repetitions, you're seeing the result of familiarity, not the beginning. That's an important difference. Because the beginning usually feels nothing like obsession. It feels awkward, slow, uncertain. You constantly wonder if you're doing it correctly. Every small task takes longer than expected. Every mistake feels bigger than it really is. Nothing about that experience feels addictive. And that's completely normal. Your brain enjoys things it understands. It enjoys recognizing patterns, predicting outcomes, feeling competent. At the beginning, you have almost none of that. Everything is unfamiliar, which means everything demands effort. So while you're looking for obsession, your brain is still trying to figure out what it's even doing. That's why so many people quit too early. Not because they lack discipline, not because they're incapable, but because they expect the emotional rewards to arrive before the skill. Most of the time, they don't. Think about reading. As a child, reading wasn't relaxing. It was exhausting. Every sentence required attention. Every page felt slow. Then, one day, without noticing exactly when, reading stopped feeling like work. The words disappeared. Only the story remained. The activity didn't change. Your relationship with it did. The same thing happens with almost every meaningful skill. People don't become obsessed because they're different. They become obsessed because the thing that once demanded constant effort starts giving something back. Curiosity grows. Competence grows. Momentum grows. And suddenly, what once required discipline starts requiring far less of it. This is why looking at successful people can be so misleading. You're comparing your first chapter to someone else's 10th. You're comparing confusion to mastery, uncertainty to confidence, beginnings to identities that took years to build. Of course it feels like you're missing something. You're comparing two completely different stages of the story. So maybe the question isn't, why am I not obsessed? Maybe the better question is, am I expecting today's work to feel like someone else's years of experience? Those aren't the same thing. The uncomfortable truth isn't that you don't want success badly enough. The uncomfortable truth is that you've probably misunderstood what obsession actually is. It isn't usually the reason people stay. Very often, it's what appears because they stayed. Maybe you're not missing obsession. Maybe you're simply expecting chapter 10 while you're still living through chapter 1.